Here, looks like it's 9:34 a.m. on my watch, so let's call the meeting to order. And David, do you want to take a roll call, please?
Certainly, President Harabedian. As I call your name, please let us know that you're here. John Harabedian.
I'm here.
Ruben Osorio.
Good morning, I'm here.
Yongping Chen.
Present.
Francisco Kim.
Present.
Chudong Li.
I'm here.
And Dr. Amy Matecki.
I'm here. Thank you.
Great. President Harabedian, I show we have 6 members present and we have a quorum. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. We'll move on to my remarks. I just want to thank everyone yet for their participation and comments yesterday, both board members and members of the public. And I look forward to another day of fruitful conversation and study. I do want to make sure I open this up for public comment because I think I am required to, even with my remarks. So I'll open it up for public comment.
And this is the moderator. We will be using the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. You will see a question mark inside a box in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device, it will be behind the 3 dots. There will also be a Q&A icon. You would type the word comment into the text box and hit send if you have something to discuss about the call to order or the president's remarks. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll now move on to item number 11, the occupational analysis report. And I do believe we have OPS staff that's going to be helping with this item.
Good morning, this is Ben Bodie, Executive Officer. That is correct, President Harabedian. We have Heidi Linzer, Chief of the Office of Professional Examination Services, and Sonia Drummond Perez, our Research Specialist here. Madam Linzer,
welcome.
please.
Heidi and Sanja, feel free to dive in.
Heidi, are you available? Heidi was going to do the presentation, so I'm just wondering if she is available to.
She might have stepped away. If we need to pause for a second just to give her some time, that's fine. It's no rush. So do you want to try to maybe call her or just text
Why don't I can start the presentation, and if she feels like she needs to take over, she can do that at that time.
Great. Yeah, up to you. Thank you. So
let me introduce myself. My name is Sonia Drummond Perez. I'm a research data specialist at the Office of Professional Examination Services. I will be presenting on the occupational analysis, it looks like this morning. All right, and let's get started. So let's move on to the first slide or the second slide. So we will start with the overview of the topics that we will present today. First, we will do a short introduction of OPS and its role at DCA. We will then discuss the purpose of licensure exams and take a quick look at how occupational analysis studies support licensure examination development. Next, we will talk about the steps we took to conduct the 2020-2021 occupational analysis of the acupuncturist profession. And finally, we will present the results of the acupuncturist occupational analysis, including demographics of the survey respondents and the summary of the content outline. Next slide, please. All right, so OPS, who are we? The Office of Professional Examination Services is a part of the California Department of Consumer Affairs. We provide professional consulting services in examination development and validation to DCA's boards, bureaus, and committees. And we can also provide recommendations to our clients based on legal requirements, professional guidelines, and technical standards related to licensure examinations. Next slide, please. All right, so there are certain laws, standards, and guidelines that are critical for what we do at OPS and also for all licensure examination programs. This applies nationally. Licensure examination programs are guided by federal and state laws and regulations, as well as professional guidelines and technical standards. California Business and Professions Code Section 139 requires that boards conduct an occupational analysis for each examination at least every 5 to 7 years, and that boards submit a report to the legislature every year indicating the status of occupational analysis and examination development. Business and Profession Code Section 139 also required OPS to develop an examination validation policy for DCA licensing programs. And this policy, which is mandated by Section 139, refers to the standards for educational and psychological testing as the most authoritative professional and technical standards to be followed when developing licensure examinations. There are other authoritative documents out there that we follow, including the principles for the validation and use of personnel selection procedures. Next slide, please. So following these laws, standards, and guidelines is critical because licensure examination scores are used by regulatory entities in making licensing decisions. For those licensing decisions to be valid, licensure examinations must provide a reliable method for identifying practitioners who are able to practice safely and competently. The validity of licensure decisions must be supported by evidence that the examination content is directly linked to the tasks performed by licensed acupuncturists at entry level, and also the knowledge required to perform those tasks safely and competently. So therefore, the focus is on entry-level tasks and knowledge important for public protection. And to further support validity, all aspects of examination development involve participation of subject matter experts, or licensed acupuncturists in this case, to ensure the examination reflects current practice. And for OPS, we always recruit, select representative samples or representative groups of licensed acupuncturists who are also currently practicing in different areas and different specialties. Next slide, please. All right, so we are talking about the purpose of occupational analyses here. And occupational analysis studies provide important evidence of validity for a licensure examination because they provide explicit and thorough definitions of test content domain. An occupational analysis is a comprehensive, systematic study of the profession that provides a description of current practice. So the key here is that it does provide us with the best description we can have of the current practice. And it defines for the purpose that we're doing it for. And it identifies critical entry-level tasks and essential knowledge required for safe and competent performance of those tasks. And I want to just emphasize this entry-level part and also safe and competent performance part. Those are the key words that are driving everything in licensure examination development and occupational analysis that are used to underlie and outline the knowledge that is tested on the exam. For this reason, the description of acupuncturist practice, which is developed as a result of an occupational analysis, provides the basis of job-related, fair, and legally defensible examinations. It can also provide basis for legislation and policies. All right, next slide, please. Let's talk about the 2020-2021 occupational analysis process that was just completed earlier this year. We started in 2020 by researching the acupuncturist profession and conducting telephone interviews with subject matter experts or licensed acupuncturists to obtain information about tasks performed by acupuncturists and the knowledge required to perform those tasks at entry level. We then worked with 3 different representative focus groups of licensed acupuncturists to further develop and refine those lists of tasks and knowledge that are describing the acupuncturist profession. Next, we incorporated the task and knowledge list into a web-based survey, which was sent to all actively licensed acupuncturists in California at the time of the survey. Once the survey closed, data were analyzed and the results were reviewed and confirmed with subject matter experts again. The subject matter experts also developed the final content outline for CALE. So this is just a quick overview of the process. Let's move on to the next slide, please. All right, so the main part of this, we start with the interviews and we'll lead through 3 panels or groups of SMEs, subject matter experts, I should say. And then we get to the point where we put all that information we've collected into a survey. And in 2021, the survey launched in March by the board and OPS, and it was sent to, the board sent the survey to licensees by using several methods. The primary method was the board mailed an invitation to complete the survey questionnaire to 11,828 acupuncturists. At the time of the survey in March, this included all acupuncturists who were actively licensed at the time. The board also posted the link to the survey on its website and sent email invitations to approximately 1,900 email addresses, I believe, on its subscriber alert list, and approximately 6,800 acupuncturists whose email addresses were on file with the board. In April 2021, the board also sent mail, email, and subscriber alert reminders about the survey to the population that was that we were reaching out to. 4,000. So as in terms of the results, 4,806 logins to the survey were registered. In other words, that's how many people opened the survey and at least answered one question. The final sample size included in the data analyses was 2,795, which is 23.6% of the actively licensed acupuncturist population that was invited to complete the questionnaire. This response rate reflects 2 adjustments that we made in order to ensure that the data represented only those who are currently working in California or have worked in California within the last 18 months, because this started in March of 2021. The pandemic had really made a difference here, and we included people not only who are currently practicing, but those who have practiced or reported having practiced in the last 18 months. And the second adjustment we made to exclude certain responses was when they were truly missing, a large volume of missing data for a respondent. Also, that response was removed. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. And let's talk about the results of the survey. So the first thing we typically look at are respondent demographics. And let me move on my slide as well here. Okay. And the respondent demographics are typically the first few questions on the survey. When the respondents open the survey, they encounter demographic questions. And these questions help us describe the respondents in terms of relevant professional characteristics. And these characteristics include, but are not limited to, education and training, work experience, work setting, geographic location. So anything that would give us a good picture of who responded to the survey. And this information provides important context for interpreting results. So we look at the demographic results first. Next slide, please. All right, so starting with demographics, Let's look at the number of years licensed as an acupuncturist. So we asked a question on this. And this graph shows the distribution of respondents based on the number of years licensed as an acupuncturist in California who responded to the survey. And it shows that acupuncturists with different experience levels were similarly represented in the final sample. And most importantly, entry-level licensees with up to 5 years of experience were well represented at 20.9%, almost 21% of the sample, which is for licensure examination a critical point. We like that segment of the population to be well represented. So great job on this to the board. Kudos to the board for reaching out to such a large population and making sure that all stakeholders are involved and engaged. The next slide, please. When asked about hours per week that they work as an acupuncturist, around 20% of respondents reported working in each of the response categories. As you can see, the graph looks pretty well balanced. And so you see 20%, reporting about 20% in 0 to 10 work hours per week, 10 to 20 hours per week, 21 to 30 hours per week, and 31 to 40 hours per week. And only about 10% reported working more than 40 hours per week as licensed acupuncturists. Next slide, please. The reported number of patients seen per week varies significantly among responding acupuncturists. Approximately 53% of respondents reported seeing 20 or fewer patients per week. When we look at, this is looking at the combined total for the first two categories that are in red and orange. So about 53% see 20 or fewer patients per week. I thought this was a significant number to report, and only about 10% reported seeing 51 or more patients per week. Next slide, please. In terms of primary practice setting, the majority of respondents reported being a sole proprietor or owner, approximately 58.9%, as you can see on the graph, with all other practice settings being significantly less prevalent among acupuncturists. Other settings that registered close to 10% each were group multidisciplinary setting, acupuncture medical group setting, and group acupuncture practice setting. I would also note here that this is very similar to the percentages we saw with the last occupational analysis. Next slide, please. All right, so when it comes to employment status, almost 75% of respondents reported being self-employed. Close to 9% also indicated being an independent contractor, and another 9% reported being a salaried employee. And then, as you can see, very few acupuncturists worked as hourly or commissioned employees based on the data. Next slide, please. And so let's look at this slide. Okay, here we asked respondents about how their patients pay for services and to select all that apply. So in other words, the percentages in the graph represent the proportion of respondents in the total sample. Remember, 2,795 was included, and a proportion of those who chose each answer option. So they could select all that apply, which is why the percentages in total do not add to 100%, right? We are looking at each one's in relation to the total sample size. Approximately 82% of all respondents indicated that their patients pay for services out of pocket. This includes cash, checks, debit, credit, PayPal, right? As long as they are reporting out of pocket. 55.5% of all respondents indicated that their patients also pay using healthcare insurance. 20% of all respondents reported accepting workers' comp, 14.6% accept personal injury insurance, about 10% Veterans Affairs, and 9.3% accept Medicaid, Medicare, or Medi-Cal. Next slide, please.
Sonia, can I ask a quick question on that slide? Sorry, not to interrupt you.
Yes.
What is the personal injury payment? What does that designation mean?
So as I'm not a subject matter expert, it would probably be best not to ask me. I will offer the best understanding I have of this. All of these are developed by subject matter experts. So I believe that personal injury insurance is related to.
I can jump in, Sandra. It's
Okay,
Jay.
please. Thank you, Jay. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah. So John, what that is it's when somebody, something like an auto injury or a slip and fall or something along that line where there's a separate injury instance outside of health insurance, like a motor vehicle accident is a real typical one that presents, or like a slip and fall somewhere where they sue somebody. And there's a long care, they have to establish blame, things like that. So it doesn't work as a normal case.
Yeah. So it's just
okay.
insurance based on a personal injury case. Got it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next slide. And we're going to talk about, we asked respondents about the percentage of time they use telehealth to provide patient care services in the past 12 months. And during the pandemic, this was such an important question, as many people considered at least going that way. An important takeaway here is that only about 1% of respondents use telehealth exclusively or almost exclusively, about 96 to 100% of the time. And then you have 55.4% that did not use telehealth at all. And this 12-month period we're talking about here is between the months, literally between March of 2020 and March of 2021. Another 25.7% use telehealth about 1 to 5% of the time. So those are the large bars that indicate a significant amount. All the other percentages are relatively small. Okay. Next slide, please. Right, here we asked respondents to choose up to 3 treatment categories that best describe the primary focus of their practice. So again, they could choose up to 3 because we wanted the primary focus of what they're doing. And top 3 most represented treatment categories that floated on top basically are pain management, which is chosen by 77.8% of all respondents. And next one is general practice, which was chosen by 42.3% of all respondents, and women's health, which was chosen by 28% of all respondents. Mental health, orthopedics, gastrointestinal, fertility, and sports medicine were also chosen by more than 10% of respondents. Next slide, please. When asked to select all treatment modalities they use in their practice, almost 99% of respondents indicated using acupuncture. You can see that at the bottom of the graph, which makes a lot of sense. And other treatment modalities that are most often used include cupping, 78.7%, herbal therapy, 69.4%, diet and nutrition, 65.5%, and electroacupuncture, 65.2%. And in relation to the curriculum discussions that were held yesterday regarding herbal therapy, so this number of 69.4 is significant. So herbs are the 3rd most prevalent modality used by acupuncturists in practice. Overall, when we look at this graph, we can see that acupuncture is used almost by everyone, and that large percentages of practitioners use multiple treatment modalities. So they do not only use 1 or 2 or even 3. They really use many. Okay, next slide, please. Native language of respondents was an important question on the survey. 53.6% of responding acupuncturists indicated English as their native language, about half, and then 22.7% indicated Chinese language as their native, and 16% indicated Korean. Only about 1.1% chose Spanish, and then other is 6.6%, and there's a wide range of different languages that were reported in this group. Next slide, please. Here we look at the language spoken by the majority of patients. 85% of respondents indicated that English was the language spoken by the majority of their patients, and want to make sure that we focus on that. So majority of patients, not all their patients. About 7.8% of respondents indicated that the majority of their patients speak Chinese, and then 4.5% indicated Korean as the language spoken by the majority of their patients. Next slide, please. In terms of highest level of education achieved by respondents, the majority, or about 56.5%, reported having a master's degree in a field related to acupuncture. And 35.6%, I believe, you'll make sure here, yes, reported doctorate degrees related to acupuncture as the highest level of education achieved. And then we have a small percentage that reported having a bachelor's degree, about 3.5%, associate degree, about 0.5%, certificate was at 2.1% of respondents, and other formal education, 1.4%. Next slide, please. Here we look at the geographic representativeness of the final sample, and this is my favorite graph. We compared the final sample consisting of about 2,795 respondents, which are shown in dark purple or represented in dark purple. We compared the final sample to the population, which we said was about 11,828 actively licensed acupuncturists who were invited to complete the survey. And this is shown in green, so purple versus green here. And for the final sample, we look at the reported percentages of primary practice location by region. In other words, the purple shows in what region is the primary practice of a respondent located. And these regions are created by our software, and they represent major metropolitan areas. And so we have LA County and vicinity, San Francisco Bay Area, San Diego and vicinity, etc., right? And for the population, we look at the percentages. So both the percentages, and for the population, the percentages look at the percent of address of record by region in the population. So who in that sample who received the survey. And for the population, the green shows the distribution of actively licensed acupuncturists by geographic region according to the address of record with the board. When we compare the two, we see that the percentages of the reported primary practice location by region in the final sample relatively closely follow the address of record by region percentages in the population that was invited to complete the survey. In other words, geographically, this close match indicates that geographically the final sample included in the analysis is representative of the acupuncturist population in California. Additionally, we see, not surprisingly, that it's LA County and vicinity, San Francisco Bay Area, and then San Diego and vicinity that take up most of this percentage-wise, which is as expected. And another thing I would like to point out, it's very good to see that the areas with smaller numbers of practitioners were also very well represented in the sample. So their numbers follow closely for the final sample what was in the population originally who received the survey. Okay. All right, so talking about the next segment of the survey or next section, here we discussed, we actually had the respondents provide task ratings, so rate the tasks that describe the acupuncturist profession, and then also knowledge. For this slide, we will talk about what they use to rate the tasks. So after demographics, they completed ratings of task and knowledge statements. They were asked to rate the tasks in terms of frequency. How often do you perform this task in your practice? And in terms of importance, how important is this task for effective performance of your practice? And as you can see, these scales that were used by respondents range for frequency scale, they range from 0 or never to 5 very frequently. And then for importance scale, they got to use the range from 0 does not apply to my job, and then 1 not important, to ultimately 5 critically important. Next slide, please. And for knowledge ratings, we only use the importance scale. Survey respondents were asked to rate knowledge statements in terms of importance. How important is this knowledge for effective performance of tasks in your practice? And the options range from 0, does not apply, and 1, not important, to 5, critically important. And we like to, I want to point out here, to include does not apply to my job, because typically, if the person is not doing this in their job, we do not necessarily look at the ratings for if they provide. They're asked not to provide them, but if they do provide them, we do not include them in the analyses. All right. Description of practice. So the final result, when we when we take into account these ratings that were provided for tasks and knowledge statements, the average frequency and importance ratings for tasks, and also average importance ratings for knowledge, were reviewed by a panel of subject matter experts of licensed acupuncturists. They also reviewed task criticality indices, which were calculated by multiplying the task frequency and importance ratings. And all of this information is in detail described in the report. So based on evaluation of these ratings, the averages of importance and frequency and criticality, subject matter experts determined which tasks and knowledge were critical for entry-level practice, and then which should therefore be assessed on a licensure exam. So if it was critical for entry-level practice based on ratings, it was included on a CALE content outline. The subject matter experts also made sure that the knowledge required for performance of each critical entry-level task was identified and linked to that task. And finally, subject matter experts also confirmed final organization of tasks and knowledge into content areas on an examination outline, and determined the final content area weights or percentages for the examination by reviewing the survey criticality data. Next slide, please. So the outcome here is a summary of the examination content outline. As you know, this is also in much detail displayed in the report, and this is just a breakdown or overview or summary. Based on OA results, the final examination content outline has 4 major content areas. The first one is patient assessment. Next one is diagnosis and treatment planning. Then we have treatment, and then professional responsibilities. The largest area is treatment with 44%, then patient assessment, 27%, diagnosis and treatment planning, 18%, and professional responsibilities, 11%. I have to say that all of these areas mainly reflect very similarly to what CALE outline breakdown looked like before. I can point out that herbal therapy went up, I believe, 4 points in terms of representation on the exam. So from about 11 or 10.5 to 15%. And all the other areas are pretty much similar to what was there before. I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's pretty much a similar outline if you compare it to the previous exam outline. Each major content area has 3 or more content sub-areas. These sub-areas summarize what is being tested within each content area. For example, patient assessment includes assessment using TCM methods, assessment using Western medicine methods, referrals, and emergency management, which gives a pretty clear picture of what is tested there. Treatment, diagnosis and treatment planning includes diagnosis and treatment planning, and also as subject matter experts preferred to highlight the area called communication with patients and other healthcare providers. And that is also included here because of the type of task and knowledge that is being tested in this area. And the next area is treatment, which subsumes acupuncture point selection, point location, and needling techniques. So we have a very heavy emphasis on acupuncture. Then there are adjunct treatment modalities included as well. And herbal therapy is at 15% here, being a treatment modality. It was this time included under the treatment content area. And professional responsibilities is the last area. Here we focus on knowledge regarding documentation, records, confidentiality, mandated reporting, informed consent, infection control and environmental safety, and professional conduct and ethics. Okay, next slide, please. And so what are the next steps? We having completed the OA and established a new examination outline, OPS will work with subject matter experts on developing new examination questions to meet item bank needs and construct new examination forms that follow the new content outline. And we have already started on this with the last fiscal year, just evaluating the bank and using that information to direct subject matter experts in writing and reviewing questions. And also, we will work with PSI to update the candidate information bulletin so that candidates have current examination content information at the time they sign up for the exam. We expect the next, this new content outline to be reflected in the new forms sometime in 2022. And every candidate will have that information at the time that they sign up for the exam. This completes the OPS presentation, and I wanted to thank everyone, thank the board for the opportunity to share the occupational analysis information with the board and the public, and take this opportunity to thank all subject matter experts and everyone who helped with this project and gave back to their profession this way. So thank you very much, and I will be available to take any questions.
Thank you, Sonia. That was very, very helpful. And we know how much work went into this, and the report itself is very, very impressive. And the presentation gave a great overview. So thank you. And I do want to open it up first to the board members for questions, but I had one question. When you mentioned subject matter experts, who are those experts exactly that you work with?
So the board and OPS work together to select subject matter experts. They represent they're a representative sample basically of the population of acupuncturists in California. We update the list, actually use the board board provides us with the list of newly licensed acupuncturists, or updates the list so that every year to 2 years we have the most current information in terms of licensees. And then we reach out to new licensees and to licensees that have worked with us in the past. There are certain criteria that are used in order to select subject matter experts. There are many of them. The most important one is that the panel should be representative of the population in terms of geographic region, so from Northern and Southern California, in terms of what the SMEs described as their own specialty. So what treatment category they use in practice. Some people focus on pain management, others on other categories. And so we want to make sure that we have a representative sample in terms of content area specialties so that they can write and review, and they're the most expert at that particular area. And we also include, especially for passing score workshops, for exam construction workshops, for review workshops, entry-level licensees, meaning anyone who is between zero, the first day basically after licensure would be eligible to 5 years of licensure. Typically, the newly licensed acupuncturists within 5 years of licensure are included in a percentage. So we, in some workshops, we'd like to see as many as half of the panel be newly licensed. And when I say newly licensed, it's up to 5 years. So it's not necessarily, we make sure that we balance this. So those are the main categories. And Heidi, if she's here, she can weigh in on this as well if I'm leaving out anything.
This is Heidi.
This is in
Thank you.
general terms.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Sonia, for giving that presentation. And yeah, just to add about subject matter experts, we make sure that they're actively working, actively practicing acupuncture, and that their license is in good standing with the board.
Great, that's helpful. The only related question to that is, do you ensure that there are educators, so folks from that may be professors who also kind of teach and practice that are consulted in this process, just knowing, you know, the relationship between the educators, the exam, and the actual practitioners? I would be interested to know if there are any kind of teachers and professors that are part of the subject matter expert pool.
So Heidi, I can answer this. Again, you can weigh in. For the OAs, I believe this is open to teachers. However, for examination development, anything that directly deals with development of CALE, that would be conflict of interest with based on the DCA policy for examination development participation. There's a direct conflict of interest for anyone who is an instructor to participate in exam development. So we, at the occupational analysis stage, we welcome input from everyone. And I'm sure the board welcomes input, of course, for the exam as well, but it cannot happen in direct contact or in direct relation to the exam development where the actual examination is built, if that makes sense, because it is a conflict of interest.
I see. Okay. Good to know. Thank you for that. I'm going to open it up to my fellow board members for any questions.
This is Member Kim. I would like to ask about this occupational analysis findings, the most eye-opening findings, and comparing to the last few other analysis surveys. Is there any big changes or any new trend?
In terms of changes or trends, I think one of the main things that came up is focus on ethics. It is still a small percentage area of the exam. However, it has been the increase in awareness about ethics and professional conduct has been there from what I have noticed. But in terms of, in general, I think the main change in terms of just the examination outline, I can say that herbal or herbs increased for about 4.5%, I believe, from last time. In terms of demographics, I did not notice changes in main areas, including, I think I mentioned about the practice settings practice settings appeared to be pretty similarly distributed, with acupuncturists working as sole proprietors mainly, as it was in the past. I think the percentage was about 1% off from that in the past, and I do have this data on my slides, not on the slides, but in my notes. I'm not sure if you have any specific questions that I could try to answer, but other than that, I think it's those are the main trends.
Thank you. I noticed that I mean, since last year, we've been dealing with all this pandemic situation, but even considering that, the number of practitioners who's practicing maybe part-time or less than part-time, seeing a very little number of patients. Is it the same trend as the occupational analysis before the pandemic?
I do not have an answer for you right now, but what we can do, I will note it and send it through the board. The other thing I suggested, the old report, I believe, occupational analysis report, is also online and can be looked up and compared in terms of the demographics. Again, though, I am more than happy to send this through the board directly, and they can share with you after the meeting or during the meeting.
Can you do you know the response rate of the last occupational analysis? I know this one is yeah.
Yes, so I do have that information. I believe the total number included was 485 in the final sample, and this year it's 2,795. So this is a huge difference in terms of the response rate, and we really have the board to thank for that. So thank you everyone who is working hard on that.
Dr. Mateki, did you have questions? I see that you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, thank you, Sonia and Heidi, for here to present it to us and explain to the studies in detail. I also want to congratulate the board staff, send the mailings and try to reach out to the mass of our acupuncturists. So I want to follow with our President Harabedian's question on the subject matter experts. So I saw you have done wonderful distribution with the language, which is 50%, over 50% English speaking, and over close to 50% there's a non-native English speakers. When you spoke to the subject matter expert, what there is a translator involved for the group, the practitioner who doesn't speak English and is not tech savvy. You know, I'm just kind of like want to know is that group, the licensees has been represented.
So the graph itself represents the respondents to the survey, and the survey was administered in English only. And I think this is traditionally the same over time. We did not change that this year. In terms of the subject matter experts for workshops, we can only work using English, unfortunately, and the items are translated. We, however, allow everyone who is interested to participate and provide any aids if necessary. We've never had a request for translator during the workshop. I'm not sure how that would be accommodated. So I think overall it would be my conclusion that people who feel comfortable enough with English would sign up, and we've never had any problems in terms of communication, as far as I know, in my time with Kale.
So maybe this is for the board of staff, maybe Mr. Boudia. I don't know the distribution. There is a group of the practitioner, because we do offer the English exam and a Korean exam. I think this is very unique for California to include the diversity, because we do have a huge population is non-English speaker, and they only go to their own speaker licensees or providers. So I don't know the percentage was being represented. So I'm just question on that. But otherwise, I think this is a well represented and a well done analysis. And the last question I have, I think there is a portion, or there is a slide with the therapies, modality therapies. I think there is like a 1.1% did not use any acupuncture, or there is another close to 6% did not use acupuncture. So this survey is included, maybe licensees don't practice acupuncture treatment or therapies, and they use other modalities. So I just didn't know which group is that. So as an acupuncturist, and the survey is included, they don't do the acupuncture therapy. So there's like around 6% included. If you know the slide I'm talking about, there is a slide about the modalities was practiced. So about 6% don't practice or don't use acupuncture treatment.
I believe, yes, that slide was not included in the presentation, and let me try to pull it up here. I have the report in front of me, just a second. There is we asked 2 questions in terms of treatment modalities used. One was they were phrased differently and they measured different things. So let me just bring this up so I can refer to it, and I can let you know the page.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And let me, all right, so one was the one that we talked about here.
Slide 17.
Slide 17 or table 17.
And 18. Well, on the slide deck, I believe we can pull slide 17 and 18.
Okay. Just a second. So in one, we asked them treatment category applied most often with patients over the last 12 months. Okay, that is the wrong one. I apologize. There we go. So this is the one thank you. This is the one we presented here, but there is one more actual survey question that I'm trying to, okay. So we asked respondents to select all that apply. This is treatment category. So I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm looking at treatment categories or treatment modalities. So is it about pain management versus women's health or treatment modality?
Yep, this one.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
this one.
So
Yes.
you can see here, yes, 99% report, and they could select all that apply here. They report using acupuncture. So only about 1% said that they don't. And cupping, 79% use cupping as well, and then 69.4% use herbal therapy, so more than 2/3. The report itself also has another slide another question on treatment modalities that was not included here, and I think that's the question, that's what the question is about. Treatment
Yes.
modality used most often over the last 12 months. So here we asked them to select all that apply, and then we had a question where they just told us one that they used most often over the last 12 months, and acupuncture was used most often by 81%, and this is in report page 24 if you are looking at the report. So 81% use acupuncture in the last 12 months as the primary most often, right? So keyword most often. And then electroacupuncture was used most often by 6%, herbal therapy by 4.6%. And I think pandemic probably affected that as well. Maybe some people were not using acupuncture as their most often used modality. Did that help?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for your explanation. Thank you. And
You're
I
very
don't have any
welcome.
further questions.
This is Member Chen. Ms. President, can I ask a question?
Sorry, I was still on mute. Yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
I just will not share my microphone. Oh, okay. Thank you for the DCA, Heidi and Senya. Excellent report, research and report. Also, thank for the former board chair, Dr. Amy Mataki's effort to wrote a letter to the licensees, and for EO Benbadia, excellent organized. Everybody worked together, board member and the staff. Anyway, so actually for me, it was the first time as a licensee, I did this analysis. So I'm very impressed. But I'm thinking why we only have 48,000, like 40% return. I think all the licensees should respond if they receive the letter and the email or the mail. So some of them, they not very, not pay attention, I think. So this time the board wrote a letter, and for me, I know the Chinese language as a native speaker. A lot of them, they had no idea. When I asked them, have you done this? I found most of them did not do it. And also a language barrier is probably the problem. I see here, actually 20% of, almost 20%, right? 17% of the responded survey was excluded. So I'd like to know how many percentage of the category of a large volume of missing data was also excluded. Do you have number, how many percentage of this kind of people? So this kind of people, maybe they don't understand the question, so they cannot answer the question. This is the first question. Thank you.
Here, I have to mention that the board offered 4 CE credits for completing the survey. And for that reason, we allowed everyone to proceed through the entire survey if they wanted to get this 4 CEs. This also included practitioners who have not practiced in the last 18 months, or we also had quite a few respondents from other states that are licensed in California, which are not taken into account towards occupational analysis for California, right? We only look at practice in California. So this could have been the reason why some of the respondents are excluded. However, there's also a large, because the report is, the survey link is posted on the board's website, a lot of people will open the survey and come to a question that eliminates them basically, which is the question of, are you licensed as an acupuncturist? And then those are all counted in the 4,800. Even though the people who are not licensed at all or have answered that way, they're counted in the 4,800, but are excluded from the 2,795. So the majority of those folks are those who have missing responses. Also, some people were just likely not to go through the whole survey. It took some time to complete it. So those might be also the respondents who did not finish the survey. We included everyone who gave at least some responses to tasks and knowledge statements. If they provided only demographic data, they were not included because they did not give us any ratings, right? Which is what we're after. Demographics are only the side explanatory or interpretatory piece that we need in order to interpret our data. And this is driven mainly by, the analysis is mainly driven for CALE content outline purposes. Other analysis could probably be done and data looked at from different perspectives, but that was not our purpose.
Okay, thank you for your answer. So other words, anybody touch the survey and started answer a couple questions will be included in the 4,800 number, right? If anybody started, even only answer one question, 10 questions, will be in the category of 40% of response, right?
Correct. So we counted all logins. If you opened the survey and proceeded to the first question, they were counted.
I see. So I wonder if some people will hit twice because they did some question and not enough time. As long as they're not completed, they will do the second time. It's possible, right?
Right. Many things are possible, which is why we do data validation and ensure that the responses that are counted in the final sample are valid.
Okay. Okay. So that sounds better.
Yes,
I have another question. Thank you. So what is large volume of missing data? So like how many percent of the answer, how many percent question answered will be included?
I can answer that, Sanja, if you'd like me to.
Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, so what staff did is if there were 75 or more questions not answered, then they weren't included as getting continuing education. And I know that they wouldn't have been included in the survey itself, right, in terms of that stuff. And then also I did want to speak to Amy Mateki's question about pure foreign language speakers that may have a really big repository of knowledge, that could weigh in. I mean, I think that's where that question was going, that we might be missing some very important expertise on that. But the way it works is that licensees need to reach out to the board to become a subject matter expert. So I would just urge, if there's somebody that you think would be a really valuable resource for that, have them work with the board and move forward with the process. I can't promise that we'll have a translator on site or how it would work, but at least that would be a start to looking at that. And then I do know in our subject matter experts, there's always fluent speakers in Chinese and Korean both, and English as well. So, but I think getting those people to step up in general is important. And even speaking of the overall occupation analysis, this time we had 6 times more response than we had before, which is really significant. But it's still getting our licensees to participate is really, really a challenge, right? So, and as Sanja mentioned, I think one of the biggest things that really fueled it, having a better response, was offering CEs. And I think that was valid, in terms of that stuff. But we were very, very happy with the response rate and feel like it's a really, really valid study based on that. But we totally cherish having more and more people participate. And, again, mailing, we did postcards, we put it on our website, we offered the CEs, we spread the word to professional associations. So, yeah, so anything anybody can do to increase, licensees' participation in the board processes would always be appreciated. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jay. So this time when I found most of the Chinese population are licensees, when I call them, just a few, they answer the mostly did not answer question. So actually one of the Chinese speaker licensees, she discovered actually online you use a cell phone, you can translate it to the Chinese language. Of course, the translation is not perfect, but at least they can use both language as reference. So I told a lot of association chair to tell their members. I think that helped. I wonder if next time, because the technology is developing, is any way we find some software or not cost much, can have translation of Chinese, Korean, or even Japanese or Spanish, whatever necessary, the answering rate will increase. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. Would anyone else like to ask a question?
Yeah, this is Member Kim. I have a question on the number of practitioners who's practicing less than part-time or even half-time. Or I as a practitioner, a licensed acupuncturist practitioner, I went to school in late 90s, and it took me almost 10 years to be competent enough to open a successful practice. And among my colleagues with this same length of practice, I believe only 10% of us are only engage in full-time practice. And then I see them, those who started late in their 50s or 60s, they already retired or passed away. And then now see this analysis numbers. I bet there will be much younger people are getting into the school and practice, and but still, the number of practice who are in less than part-time, is this normal for other healthcare profession? If you see other occupational analysis?
I can try to answer that. One thing, again, I'm not a subject matter expert, so an acupuncturist would probably be more qualified to answer this, but my experience during the workshops with SMEs is that many people have more than one license or are in practice part-time because they have other sources of income. So I'm not sure if that answers the question fully, but yes, again, I'm not the right person to ask. Probably Jay might be more qualified to answer that.
Well, Sonia, if I may, I think the question was more in other, so not necessarily subject matters in acupuncture, but in other similar types of provisions, whether it's um, different medical studies that you've done for physicians or other boards, I think Francisco's question was, does the level of expertise that you were seeing for the participants here who are providing the feedback, was that similar for other studies that you've done in non-acupuncture occupation analysis? Is that right, Francisco?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm not sure if it's specific to acupuncture. It's more just how did this compare to other occupational analyses that you've done?
This is Heidi. I want to just qualify this data as we were talking because, as Sonia mentioned, this was conducted during the pandemic. So I am want to be aware of that they may have reported working less hours because of the pandemic. But in general, when we do occupational analysis and we ask this question, I think more people are working full time for other, medically related professions. But we will compare to what the data we received the last time we did the study, and that might help because I am concerned that this was during the pandemic, so they reported working less hours.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump in here too for a minute on that one too. Is that, and this is actually maybe an assumption on my part. So Heidi and Sandra, keep me honest. But for a primary care healing arts board, I think the acupuncture board is your only client that actually develops and provides its own test. Professions like nursing, physician's assistants, medical doctors, they're all relating to national standards, and they do their own work. It's not conducted by OPS; it'd be done by that job study or something along that line. So so it kind of compares differently, but I do think some of the part-time practice does represent some of the challenges acupuncturists have of being sole providers, entrepreneurs able to deal with that rather than in other professions where you can find employment is more the prevailing sense. I mean, if you look at the data, most people are in business for themselves. And so it allows for kind of that I'm in business, but I can do something else at some level. And so that is, creating more regular jobs, I think would really change that dynamic. But right now, this seems to be very consistent, in terms of what other occupation analysis is for acupuncturists. But specifically for the OPS presenters, do you do the major testing for any other primary care healing arts board?
Jay, Heidi might be able to jump in on this, but we do it for psychiatric technicians. They're psychiatric entry-level nurse. We also have a lot of the healing arts professions, including therapists, etc. So Heidi, please weigh in on this.
Yes, I think when we do the therapist professions and psychologists, we see similar data that they're not all working full time because a lot of them have their own businesses like acupuncturists. But you are correct in saying that, yes, most of the healing arts professions use national exams. So we don't always have California specific data. We do work with chiropractors but again, I don't have the data in front of me, but we can check. We do a state-based exam for chiropractors. We do a state-based exam for dentists. So those are other healing arts professions.
And Heidi, those are supplemental exams or are they the primary exam?
Those are supplemental. But as Sonia mentioned, we do the primary exam for the psychiatric technicians.
Mr. President, this is a member Mateki. May I speak?
Oh, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hurd, for your question. And I just want to make it clear here is when you talk about the other professions, like a medical board, MD, nurse, and even with the physical therapy, all the other, or you see with even chiropractors, so all the other ones, I believe that the education is different. And I think a different state have a different education hours requirement. And I believe California is one of the state, the education, especially, we can see we have 3,000 hours requirement. So I just want to make it clear, we have, close to 12,000 licensees here in California. And if we compare, with other state, everybody else take the national exam, and then other state, other professions do different hours, they can do acupuncture too, right? We all know that a different state, and they do few hours, 20 hours, 50 hours, they can do acupuncture too. So I'm just want, when we talk about this, I think, Kill hold the high standard because, we want to protect our population here in California. We have a 40 million populations here, and our licensees is over 12,000 here. And if other states match with our standard, we can have a national exam here. Maybe the Kill becomes the national exam. So I have nothing. I think other exam done wonderful work, fit for other states, but California is a different state, and we have the large number of the population and the diversity practitioner here. We care a different, language speaking here. So, and also just I think the lawyers, maybe Mr. Harabedian, you can, chime on this. I believe the all for the lawyers exam, every state have their own exam too.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? If not, I'll open it up to the public.
And this is your moderator. We are beginning to open the Q&A feature of WebEx. If you would like to make a comment on this occupational analysis report, you can hit the Q&A icon, which is the question mark inside a box at the bottom right of your WebEx screen, or if you're on a mobile device, it's behind the 3 dots. Type the word comment in the text box and hit send. We do have our first comment from someone identified as Yoon Kim. And Yoon, I will be sending you a request to unmute your microphone, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. One moment while I send you the request.
Hello,
And you may speak.
Hello, this is Yoon Kim from Emperor's College. Thank you, board, for all of your efforts and for this occupational report. I would like to know, when will the new CALE exam outline be implemented on the exams?
Heidi, I can answer that. We have a plan of doing that in 2022. We are still, after this board meeting, we will talk to board staff and make sure that that is, in terms of the actual day, that is planned and they're informed. After that, it is up to board whether they announce it and how it's announced. But every candidate, I think, what's important to remember, every candidate, they can sign up for an exam up to 3 months in advance. And at the time they sign up, they would get the current content outline. So that means that they would know if the exam is different or the new exam is in place when they sign up.
And our next comment request is from someone identified as Ron Zaidman. Ron, I will send you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 3 minutes to speak. I
Thank
think
you.
we can hear you. Yes, we can.
Ron Zeidman, president of Five Branches University. I want to thank the board and OPS for this occupation analysis, for sharing it, for presenting it in such a clear way. This is very useful information for us. So we feel very proud of the work that you are doing. I want to repeat a comment that Dr. Chen mentioned, which is the unfortunate inherent bias in the occupation and analysis, because as you know, the examination is given in 3 languages: English, Chinese, and Korean. And I would highly recommend that OPS, especially using modern software, present the survey in 3 languages, to not include our Chinese community, which is significant, to not include our Korean community, which is significant, means that we're structuring it with a bias. And it's an unfortunate one, because these practitioners have a slightly different background, because the medicine comes from there, and their understanding is obviously different from what it would be to an English speaking person. So I highly recommend that we eliminate that bias and include this broader practicing population in the survey. I think the results will more or less align to what you have found, but there will be differences. For example, the herbology might be significantly higher. I don't know, but that's what I would suspect. So I hope you'll be able, especially with modern software, to present the survey in all 3 languages of the state exam. Thank you.
And our next commenter is Neil Miller. Neil, I've sent you a request to unmute your microphone and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Neil Miller from CalAtma. I'd like to thank the board for listening to CalAtma's suggestion a couple of years ago that we give CEs for participation in this. I think that's one of the reasons the participation was so high. I have a couple quick comments. There's a question about the modalities used, and one of the options is to pick lasers, and lasers are not in our scope of practice. There were a very low number of participants who said that they use lasers. I suspect that it's much higher that people use it, but they're aware that it's not in our scope of practice. So I think that that's an avenue that we should look at. The profession has been asking to keep in California to keep up with that in other states. And I would hope that we could structure something that shows that we need education in this subject so that we could add it to our scope. The survey is real, and the exam that we do is supposed to be for entry level education. And since the time of the Little Hoover Commission over 20 years ago, the profession has stated that we need more education and that we need a doctoral level of education. The schools at that time opposed having more education. And as soon as the Little Hoover Commission said, we don't need to have doctoral level education, all of those schools who opposed it started offering it. And you can see by the results of this survey, the high percentage of practitioners that are now paying exorbitant amounts of money to go back to school to add to their education, to be have that doctoral level education. And we at CalAtma, and I know that many of the other associations believe that that entry level of doctorate education is what is necessary to have the minimal level of competence that we really need. Many of the things that were brought up at the Little Hoover Commission still remain unresponded to, and that's in no way reflected in the analysis of some of those same issues that are still being debated today. So I do applaud the analysis and the effort, but there are some shortcomings about what is entry
30
level
seconds.
and not correlating the high level of practitioners that are going for the doctorate and believe that it should be part of entry level education. Thank you for your time.
And I see no further requests for public comment. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll bring it back to the board, and any additional discussion or comments before we move on from this?
This is Member Kim. I appreciate all this input from the public comment. I want to ask OPS and also the board staff, how are we going to use this analysis report reflecting to the curriculum review, and what is the process going to be? And yeah, that's my question.
Does staff want to answer that, or?
Sure. Could you say that question again, Member Kim? That's why I'm responding.
So how are we going to use this occupational analysis report in consideration to for the curriculum review and also the exam study for the future CALE exam?
Yeah, so I'll start with the last one. This is going to be used specifically to help develop the examination plan, which then is what the exam is based off of. So that is done by OPES and with our subject matter experts. In terms of using it for the curriculum reassessment or review, the board is able to use this data to see what kind of modalities are being used, what the current licensees are doing. Like, for example, there was a call for greater education on how to run your own business or ethics. So the board can then look at that and call on the stakeholders to say, how would the stakeholders, like our educators, our members of our audience, how would they address this need that's been identified by individuals who have just completed programs at their schools? So yeah, this will be used to inform us. In terms of the exam development, that is a confidential process, so can't really provide many details there, but it is used to link everything back to this. I'm sorry, to the exam. I'm not sure if OPS can provide more detail in terms of exam development, but yeah, in terms of the curriculum, this is for us to bring to bear when we discuss this with the stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Any other comments from the board members before we close out this item? I do want to thank Heidi and Sonia for this, and staff for all the work on this report. I thought it was really, really helpful. It's probably one of the more educational, informative pieces of information and products that I've read since being a board member, and it gave me a more in-depth kind of understanding of the practice as a non-licensee, non-practitioner. So I found it to be extremely helpful. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing this being implemented. So thank you again. We are an hour and a half into this, and I do, for staff's kind of sake, do want to check in and see if, before we move on to item number 12, to get an update from Dr. Matecki on the licensing committee. I want to check in on a break and where we are and whether we should take a 15-minute break.
I think it would be opportune, President Herbanian, to take a 15-minute break at this time and come back to the last few items.
Great, let's do it.
Thank you. Current time is 11:04. Let's get everybody back here at 11:20. Cheers.